Hi everyone, and welcome to the this afternoon's webinar. This is an N8 Policing Research Partnership funded small grant that's been run by Professor Geetanjali Gangoli and Nikki D'Souza and Dr. Nikki D'Souza on recording honour-based violence and abuse, and how police processes for that recording affect how the police respond to and can manage those crimes, or those incidents rather. So I'm not going to hang around for long. I'm just going to say that if you want to ask any questions that come to you during the presentation, just put those in the chat, and then when we do the Q&A, I'll call on people to ask questions, or you can use the raised hand function at that point. As there's quite a small group today, we can probably have more of an in-depth chat afterwards, which is usually quite interesting. Okay, so without further ado, I'll hand over to Geetanjali.
Hi, thanks, Helen, for that. So I've already been introduced, and Nikki has been as well. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Helen and the N8 team. Been absolutely incredible, very helpful, not only in obviously giving us the money to do this work, but also sort of ongoing support throughout the process. And of course, just want to use this opportunity to thank our research associates, Kate Butterby and Ayushi Dutt, who've been instrumental in collecting the data and working with us throughout. As with all these things, they're on to other things, as is the nature of academia. But they've been an absolutely incredible team to work with. So just to introduce the research, just wanted to talk to you a little bit about why we did the research. When we started it, what we realized was that obviously this is based on the work, some of the work that I've been doing across the years on a based violence and abuse, and some of the work that Nikki's been doing around sort of police systems and working with the police. And we are also aware that through the work done by Sylvia Walby and Liz Kelly, that recording systems for crimes against women and girls are often inconsistent, particularly for things like domestic abuse, where different police forces have different methods or different databases or different way of recording it. And we were aware that there's been a gap in the consistent recording of honor-based abuse crimes. And for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to use the term honor-based abuse to be consistent with the domestic abuse legislation that was introduced recently. And obviously, the inconsistency in recording honor-based abuse means that the outcomes for victims are also inconsistent. So when we started off, we were working in line with the HMIC report in 2015, which I've been associated with as well. Unfortunately, I've been working in this area for about 20 years now. I say unfortunately because you would hope that an area like that would require less work after 20 years, but sadly that is not the case. But the work that we did 8 years ago found that it was really important to have accurate and ethical recording of honor-based abuse. And that's something that the police acknowledged in 2015, 8 years ago. But there's continued to be gaps there. So the aims of this project were to improve the identification and recording of honor-based abuse, to analyze how existing recording is done by the police, and to address the question of whether a new definition of honor-based abuse would help us to record approaches to honor-based abuse across police forces. So just to say that when we started off, we thought that we would be looking at recording of honor-based abuse, forced marriage, and female genital mutilation, because all these forms of violence and abuse are seen as being, if you like, using Liz Kelly's ideas around continuum, that they form a continuum across ideas around honor. So we thought we would look at all three forms of violence against women and girls. And I will talk to you a little bit about why we changed it. I'm not going to go into the methodology. I'm leaving that up to you to just look at, but obviously I am happy to take any explanations, any sort of questions around that. The only thing that I would like to point out is that the methods that we used, the methodology rather that we used, was co-produced I mean, not completely co-produced, but was partially co-produced with our police partners, and we had to change it as we went along. Um, so why did what did we do? So as I said, we initially thought that we would also look at the recording systems for female genital mutilation and forced marriage. But when we did our pilot interviews and focus groups with the police forces and the two NGOs that were our partners here, what we found was that the FGM and forced marriage were seen as being more straightforward. The reason that they were straightforward was because they were criminal offenses, or rather, they are criminal offenses. And with FGM, it's in particular because they're mostly associated. Victims are often children, or young, under 16, commonly, though of course there are cases of FGM for older, conducted on older women, and then it becomes a safeguarding issue, and there's almost like a different route that they take, and the recording is quite straightforward. It's either happened or it's not happened. Again, with forced marriage, criminal offense, it's either happened, not happened. So, or there's a threat for it to be a threat, and it could have happened. What is interesting about honor-based abuse is that honor-based abuse in itself isn't a criminal offense. There are many definitions of honor-based abuse, many sort of varied understanding of it. And what we realized from pilot interviews and focus groups was that actually the area that the police and the third sector organizations thought was a problem in terms of recording was in the area of honor-based abuse, because there are no clear-cut recording practices. Right, so I'm going to move on now. And these are our main 5 findings. I shall go into each of these findings, and then we can have a little bit, hopefully, have a bit of a discussion around around these things. And I really look forward to that. Again, Helen can make available the report that we have, if she hasn't already done so, the report that we wrote for N8, because that obviously will have more details on many of these key findings that we had. So the first finding that we had was that the police recording of honor-based abuse is affected by 4 key recording patterns. So the key recording patterns is of underreporting, where honor-based abuse might be underreported or undercounted on police systems. So, for instance, it may be recorded as domestic abuse, and we often find, because honor-based abuse is associated in the minds of the police with particular ethnic minority communities or racially minoritized communities, if you, as I prefer to call them. if they take place in white communities or sometimes in Gypsy, Roma, and traveler communities, they get missed. So there are also financial and sexual abuse cases which that may have an element of HBA, honor-based abuse, and these then don't get recorded as honor-based abuse. There's also patterns of over recording, so they could be double counted or triple counted or flagged more than once. So the same incident is being flagged as domestic abuse, honor-based abuse, forced marriage. Sometimes that's not a problem in itself because that incident could be have multiple aspects of um, crime, if you like. So it could be all these things, but sometimes it isn't. So it's important to look at why that happens and when that happens. The third recording pattern that we looked at is creative recording, where incidents that typically aren't perceived as being honor-based abuse, but may fit into the legal definition for forced marriage and FGM may be recorded under this category. So an example that was given to us was an Eastern European victim of trafficking who received threats about her profession being made news in her home country that was classified as honor-based abuse. Typically, that would not be seen as an honor-based abuse cases. The classic examples of honor-based abuse are of women who are either forced to marry and then are attacked, raped, or murdered because of them of the perception of them dishonoring the family. There was also an example of a sex worker who was assaulted in the genital area, and that was recorded as female genital mutilation, which again was an unusual and quite a creative way of using the law. Misrecording, sometimes categories are wrongly recorded as honor-based abuse. So for instance, domestic